going back to this whole idea of who represents who, and then I want to kind of get it, put it more into the birth mom's rights and stuff. But this idea of who represents who. So with you working with an attorney who also does placements, the attorney that you're working with represents you, the family, right?
Yes. Yes.
Then do you also hire another attorney to represent the birth mom? Does she need an attorney? Where's that piece?
Okay, well, that's great. That's a great question. So in the state of Florida, and I can only talk about the state of Florida because laws are different in
Yeah.
every state regarding adoption, who represents who. In some states, the attorneys bring in the birth mom and they're with the birth mom. And then they tell the adopting parents, go find yourself your own attorney. So,
Hmm.
depending, but I can only talk about Florida. In the state of Florida, what's required is if anybody is making an adoption plan or thinking about making an adoption plan, whether you're the prospective adoptive parent or the hopeful adoptive parent, or you are the birth parent, or you might be a potential biological father or the legal father. The law requires that the adoption entity, which would either be me, which is the adoption attorney, or the agency, have you read what's called a disclosure. And in disclosure, it tells everybody what their rights are in an adoption. And in our disclosures, it specifically says who the adoption entity is, that the entity cannot provide legal advice to birth parents and does not provide legal advice to birth parents, which means that the birth parent can have their own attorney should they choose one. Now, if they choose to have their own attorney, that is something that is factored in the overall costs that we assess on any particular case. Because if a birth mom at any point in time says, I want my own counsel, then we have already reserved those funds to pay an attorney out of the funds that you, the adopting parents, provide to us for your particular case. So legal fees for a birth mom is a reasonable and an allowable expense in any adoption.
Does
If
she
we,
need her own attorney
well, that I was
every
about
time?
No,
Sorry.
she doesn't need an attorney. It's up to her if she'd like to have her own attorney. I would say that most birth families do not elect to have their own attorney. Uh, they're told you have the right to have your own counsel. She may feel very comfortable that the information she's receiving from us is adequate, that she feels protected, that she feels that we hear her, she feels that we're listening to her, that we're meeting her needs in any given time or any given situation, in any particular circumstance or situation. As long as she's feeling that her needs are being met, she might not want an attorney. However, when it comes time for consents, depending on who our birth mother is and what's been going on in the situation, what our history with her might have been, what information we might have gathered, maybe depending on her past medical or past psychological history, we might suggest and recommend and see that she has her own attorney. Because, of course, giving her own attorney, particularly at the time of her signing consents, is a protection for you as the adopting parents, because we want to make sure that there's no appearance of impropriety, that everything is properly explained to her. And for the same reason, we also have, at the time we do consents, I always have a court reporter present. Not everybody does, so you might want to talk to whoever it is that you're going with for your adoption plan, that when they do consents, that they think about having a court reporter present, because a birth mother or a birth family does not have to appear in court for their consents in Florida. We can do out of court consents. So having a court reporter there to memorialize what happened, went on, the questions we ask her, her understanding of her rights and what it is that she's doing at the time she signs consents could be very, very, very important. So that's why having her own attorney at the time of consents minimizes risk.
That's. I want to circle back to that later, but I want to ask you while we're talking about kind of birth mom consents. Can you talk about, whether or not she has her own attorney? I'm sure the information that's given to her is probably the same, right?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell me what At that point, and we can back up it later, but at that point, what is told to her? Um, Tell us the types of things she is told and versus what she has to sign, and what if she speaks only Spanish?
Uh-huh. Oh, good. There's case law on that. Okay. So, in any event, also in the state of Florida, because a birth family doesn't come to court, under our laws, it is required that a birth parent, before they sign consent, undergo what's called a birth parent interview. It's with a licensed mental health counselor or a licensed clinical social worker. Queries the birth mom about her past, about her history, about the reasons why she might be engaging in an adoption plan. And there's a report that's drafted and filed with the court so that the court knows what the birth mom's state of mind is, or what their knowledge is, and what they went over with them in advance. But those are the same sort of things that I go over with the birth mom when she's doing this. The consent, it's not just a one-page document. It's like a stack of papers. It could be extremely overwhelming for a birth mom. You can imagine after they've delivered their baby, the soonest that we can get consent is, well, the way the law reads is we can obtain birth mom consent at 48 hours after birth, or sooner if the doctor says she's fit to be discharged from the hospital.
Oh, I didn't know that in Florida.
So, right. So if you have a woman who's delivered babies before, she has other children at home, maybe she doesn't need to stick around. The hospital doesn't want to stick around. The doctor says she's fit to be discharged. The doctor can discharge her before 48 hours. If there's a discharge order on the chart, we can come in and consent. If a birth mom has the cesarean section, we expect or anticipate that she's probably not going to be discharged until the third day, even though the law allows us to go in and get consents at 48 hours. I'm not banging on the door at the 48-hour mark. Like if she delivered at 2 a.m, I'm not running to the hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning. If she's going to sign a consent at 2 o'clock in the morning, she'll sign a consent the following morning during regular business hours. Because if I bump in on her at 2 a.m. and then all of a sudden she cries foul, you can only imagine what a judge would say. You were there at 2 o'clock in the morning. You were just waiting for the 48-hour mark. So it has the appearance of impropriety. For the very same reasons, we don't, at least in my office, I don't stand over the birth mom. We're not there. Like after she delivers her baby, if she wants us there, we're there. If she wants you there, you're there. If she doesn't want us there, we're not there. But we don't want to give the appearance of impropriety. I don't want to stand over her like big sister, big brother breathing down her neck. And she says, I really didn't have time to think because they were standing over me the whole time. Okay, so we have to give her time to breathe, time for her to think. That's what our legislature wants her to do, to have that 48 hours to really think things through. No, and the things that we tell her is, nothing that's happened up until this time obligates you to go forward with signing consents. Even if you want to sign consents, nothing obligates you to place your baby with the adopting family who you've been matched with, even though they've been paying all your living expenses. So nothing she does up until that time obligates her. She could turn around and change her mind. Okay. And even if in the back of her mind, she was hedging, she wasn't sure, she's allowed to change her mind no matter what. Okay. Up until that time. That's why I say always, it's not the waiting period during the pregnancy leading up to the time of delivery that's the hard part. The hard part for all of you is waiting that 48 hours, waiting for her to sign that consent, because you're there. I've had birth moms call families to the hospital and then turn around and say, I changed my mind. So, that's really hard and really difficult. Sometimes I could spit nails at these girls, because, I'd much rather them not call you to the hospital and not have you there if they're not sure if they're wanting to make that placement, because it makes it doubly hard. But they're told that they can change their mind. They have the right to change their mind. We want to make sure that they've thoroughly thought this through. Have they had enough time to think about things? They understand that once they sign the consent, it's binding and irrevocable. They don't have a grace period. They can't say they changed their mind. This is not temporary, like DCF or if the child goes into state custody. This is not glorified babysitting. This is relinquishing your parental rights and providing a family a gift, and they are and become the parents. When you sign that consent, you're authorizing me to terminate your parental rights. And they go through that colloquy. We also go through the colloquy of, we need for you to tell us the name or names of any and all birth fathers or anybody who may potentially be a birth father. And why is that important? Because we want to make sure that this baby, when we place this baby with you, is legally available to be placed with you. Most of the time, we're dealing with these issues involving potential birth fathers from the get-go, okay? Because a lot of money is going out the door to these moms, and it's your money. And we want to make sure, A, she's still pregnant, okay? And we're not giving away your money and she's no longer pregnant. We want to make sure that the baby's legally available to be placed for adoption once after she gives birth and the baby's discharged from the hospital. So as an adoption attorney or as an adoption entity, we're obligated to put on notice anybody that she identifies as a potential father up until the time she signs her consent. Once she signs her consent, we are filing the termination of parental rights, and that acts as a cutoff from any man filing with the paternity registry. So we're asking her those questions. We're asking her if she believes she's under the influence of fraud or duress. Did anybody force her to sign these consents against her will? Is anybody influencing her in any untoward way? Is her family supportive? Is her family pressuring her? Has she had an opportunity to meet the adopting parents? Is she the one that selected them, or the adopting parents selected for her? Has she spoken to them? Has she met them? Do you feel that, we ask her, she feels that she shares a number of common bonds with you all? And does she want to place the baby with you? And we also let her know if something happens where the judge ultimately doesn't place the baby with you, does she want us to come back to her for her to reselect another family, or if she would like us to select another family if something should happen during the period of time at the time the baby's placed with you all and the time we get to finalization, in the event that the finalization doesn't go through. You can breathe. And the thing is that the best thing to do is never operate out of fear. The right families come for the right babies. The right babies are there for the right families. If it's meant to be, it's going to happen. If you have a fall through, it hurts like hell. Okay. But the best thing to do is to brush it off and jump right back in the game, because hindsight's always 20/20. If you have a fall through, it's because you've dodged a bullet, or your baby's on his or her way, and had that birth mom not pulled off, you would have not otherwise been available. I see it happen. Yes. I've been witness to it time and time and time again. Okay, but I think one of the biggest things that really helps a birth mom to go through with her adoption plan, if she's on the fence, is the relationship that you have built with her, the trust that you've built with her. Doesn't mean you have to invite her into your home, but your only job is to have her fall in love with you, so that she wants to place her baby with you, that she feels comfortable with you. And that's